There is a moment most people never notice, the exact instant they give their power away. It doesn't happen during a failure, or a public mistake, or even an argument. It happens quietly, when they begin to explain themselves to someone who has already decided not to understand. Imagine a man standing in a crowded room, speaking calmly. His words are measured, his posture still. At first, people lean in. But then someone interrupts him, challenges him, questions his intent. The man smiles, and instead of pausing, instead of allowing the silence to do its work, he starts to justify. He adds details. He clarifies. He softens his tone. And with every sentence, something subtle shifts. The room doesn't grow more respectful. It grows more comfortable dismissing him. The Stoics noticed this pattern long ago. They understood that explanation, when offered to the wrong audience, is not clarity, it is submission. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you don't need to convince others that you are a good person. You need only to be one. The rest is noise. Yet most people live as if their worth depends on being understood by everyone. Consider how often you explain your choices. Why you said no. Why you changed direction. Why you didn't reply. Why you are different now. Each explanation feels harmless, even polite. But beneath it is a quiet fear, the fear of being misjudged. And the Stoics would say this fear is the true chain. There was once a teacher who walked through the city each morning without acknowledging the whispers that followed him. Some called him arrogant. Others said he was hiding something. His students, confused, asked why he never defended himself. The teacher stopped, looked at them, and asked a simple question: if a stranger calls the sun dark, do you argue with them, or do you let the day continue? When you stop explaining yourself, you begin to see who was never listening. Some people grow uncomfortable with your silence. They were used to your justifications, your emotional footnotes, your effort to keep them at ease. Without explanations, they are forced to sit with their own assumptions. Most won't like that. This is where the shift begins. Your words become fewer, but heavier. Your decisions stand on their own, without decoration. You no longer rush to correct every misunderstanding, because you realize that misunderstanding is often chosen, not accidental. Epictetus warned that if you want to improve, you must be willing to appear foolish or wrong in the eyes of others. Silence, to the insecure, looks like guilt. To the wise, it looks like restraint. At first, the quiet feels uncomfortable. You will feel the old impulse rise, to clarify, to smooth things over, to make sure everyone knows your side. But if you resist it, something unexpected happens. The world starts responding differently. Not everyone, but the right people. Those who respect strength lean closer. Those who relied on your explanations to control the narrative drift away. You notice that you are no longer pulled into debates that lead nowhere. Your energy, once scattered across endless clarifications, returns to you. And slowly, without announcing it, you begin to move through life with a different gravity. People start to listen more carefully, because they know you won't repeat yourself. They sense that when you speak, it is because the words matter, not because you are defending your existence. The Stoics believed that dignity is not claimed, it is revealed in what you refuse to do. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing your actions can speak without a translator. You don't explain your boundaries. You enforce them. You don't justify your values. You live them. And in that restraint, something inside you settles. Because when you stop explaining yourself, you are no longer asking the world for permission to be who you already are. And in that pause, in that unfinished silence, everything is still moving, still unfolding, carrying you forward into a place where words are no longer used to prove, but only to reveal what was always there, waiting to continue. You begin to notice how often silence does the work you once tried to force with words. A raised eyebrow replaces a paragraph. A calm pause replaces a defense. And strangely, situations that once drained you now resolve themselves without your involvement. People either adjust their behavior, or remove themselves. Both outcomes are clarity. There is a Stoic idea rarely spoken aloud: not everyone deserves access to your reasoning. Explanations are intimate. They reveal priorities, values, inner structure. When you hand them out carelessly, you invite others to rearrange what is not theirs to touch. This is why the wise grow selective, not secretive, but precise. Think of how authority truly operates. The most powerful figures in any room are not the ones speaking the most. They are the ones who could speak, but choose not to. Their silence creates space, and into that space others project meaning. This is not manipulation. It is human nature. When you stop filling the air, people fill it for you. At first, some will test you. They will provoke explanations, ask leading questions, misinterpret your actions on purpose. This is the final pull of the old dynamic. If you take the bait, the pattern resets. But if you remain steady, something breaks, not you, but the expectation that you owe them access to your inner world. The Stoics trained for this. They practiced withholding immediate reaction, not because emotions were wrong, but because reactions made you predictable. And predictability, in the wrong hands, becomes a weakness. When you stop explaining yourself, you become harder to manipulate, harder to rush, harder to corner. You also begin to hear yourself more clearly. Without constant self-justification, your decisions grow quieter and firmer. You stop asking, "How will this look?" and start asking, "Is this aligned?" This shift is invisible to most people, but it changes everything internally. You are no longer performing coherence. You are living it. There is a cost, of course. You will be misunderstood. Stories will be written about you that you never correct. But the Stoics would remind you that reputation lives outside your control, and peace does not. To chase understanding from everyone is to volunteer for endless disturbance. Over time, a pattern emerges. Those who only valued your explanations fade. Those who value your presence remain. Conversations become fewer, but deeper. Conflicts shorter. Respect quieter, but more real. And one day, almost without noticing, you realize that the urge to explain has softened. Not because you are numb, but because you are grounded. You trust your actions enough to let them stand alone. The world hasn't become kinder. People haven't become wiser. But you have learned where your responsibility ends. And in that boundary, something unshakable begins to form, something that continues to grow each time you choose stillness over defense, restraint over reaction, and allow the silence to keep unfolding. You start to feel the difference in your body before you can explain it in words. Your shoulders stay relaxed in moments that once tightened them. Your breath doesn't rush to meet confrontation. You no longer rehearse conversations in your mind, imagining how you will defend yourself if questioned. That rehearsal was never preparation, it was anxiety disguised as responsibility. The Stoics believed that inner order creates outer calm. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop negotiating with chaos. You accept that some people will never update their version of you, because that version serves them. And once you see this, the desire to correct them fades. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Silence begins to feel less like absence and more like presence. When someone challenges you and you do not immediately respond, the moment stretches. In that stretch, truth often reveals itself. Either the challenge dissolves, or it exposes the insecurity behind it. Words, when rushed, protect others from seeing themselves. Silence does not. You also begin to understand something subtle: explanations tie you to outcomes you cannot control. Once you explain, you hope. You hope to be understood, validated, accepted. Hope in this form is fragile. The Stoics preferred steadiness. They chose to act well and release the rest. There is a story of a statesman who was accused publicly of betrayal. The crowd waited for his defense. Instead, he adjusted his cloak and walked away. Days later, when his actions proved the accusation false, no speech was needed. Those who demanded an explanation learned patience. Those who needed drama lost interest. His dignity remained intact because he did not gamble it on immediate approval. As you move through life this way, your timing changes. You speak later, but better. You respond slower, but with weight. You are no longer pulled into every misunderstanding, because you recognize that not every misunderstanding is a problem, some are filters. The need to be right gives way to the need to be whole. And in that wholeness, you discover a deeper freedom. You are not withholding yourself. You are conserving yourself. Your energy stays with you, available for creation, for discipline, for quiet joy. The Stoics called this self-mastery, not control over others, but over the impulse to leak yourself into every moment. Eventually, people sense it. They may not name it, but they feel it. Your calm unsettles those who rely on reaction. Your silence commands more attention than your explanations ever did. Not because you are trying to appear powerful, but because power no longer needs to announce itself. And so the shift continues, unseen but undeniable, as each unspoken moment reinforces the same truth, that your life does not require constant narration, that meaning does not collapse without commentary, and that somewhere beyond the urge to explain, there is a steadiness still forming, still deepening, still moving forward, asking nothing, proving nothing, and quietly continuing. Quietly continuing, even when the world tries to interrupt it. You begin to notice that moments which once demanded explanation now pass like weather. A raised voice no longer summons a reply. An accusation no longer triggers urgency. You let things hang unfinished, and in doing so, you deny them the drama they feed on. This is not indifference. It is discernment. The Stoics understood that most conflicts are sustained not by truth, but by participation. When you step back, when you refuse to feed the exchange, the conflict has nowhere to land. It collapses under its own weight. What once felt like strength, arguing your case, reveals itself as attachment. What felt like weakness, silence, reveals itself as freedom. There is a strange relief in no longer rushing to be seen correctly. You realize how exhausting it was to curate yourself for every room, to translate your intentions into language others might approve of. When you stop explaining, you reclaim that effort. Your inner life becomes less crowded. Your thoughts line up instead of competing for justification. People begin to change their approach with you. Some speak more carefully, sensing that they won't get immediate reactions. Others grow louder, hoping to pull you back into the old rhythm. You see the difference now. The first group respects boundaries. The second resents them. And still, you remain where you are. You start to value delayed understanding over instant agreement. The Stoics believe time reveals what words distort. When you allow time to pass without defending yourself, patterns speak. Consistency speaks. Character speaks. What remains unclear in the moment often becomes obvious later, without you saying a word. You also notice how silence sharpens your awareness. Without the pressure to respond, you listen more deeply. You catch what is being said beneath the words, the insecurity, the need, the unspoken demand. You respond only when something real is being asked, not when something emotional is being projected. This changes the way you relate to yourself as well. You stop explaining your own choices to your own doubts. You act, observe, adjust. You don't argue with yourself endlessly anymore. The mind grows quieter when it realizes it no longer has to perform for an imaginary audience. There are moments when the urge returns. Old habits don't vanish, they wait. In those moments, you pause. You let the silence stretch just a little longer than feels comfortable. And each time you do, you feel that steadiness strengthen, like a muscle being trained through restraint. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, not forcing, not resisting, but allowing what does not matter to fall away. Explanation, you learn, is not truth's companion. Integrity is. And so you continue moving through conversations, decisions, and misunderstandings with this quiet discipline, letting some questions remain unanswered, letting some stories about you exist without correction, letting the space around your actions speak more clearly than words ever could, while something deeper keeps forming underneath it all, unfinished, unannounced, and still moving. Still moving, without asking to be witnessed. You start to sense how rare this way of being is. Most people rush to fill every pause, to close every loop, to make sure nothing about them is left undefined. They fear that if they don't explain, they will disappear. You discover the opposite. The less you explain, the more solid you become. There is a point where silence stops feeling like a strategy and starts feeling like home. You are no longer measuring your words against potential reactions. You are no longer bracing yourself for misunderstanding. You accept that clarity for everyone is an impossible standard, and you release yourself from it. The Stoics warned against living as if you were on trial. When you explain yourself constantly, you turn every interaction into a courtroom. You gather evidence, anticipate objections, plead your case. But life was never meant to be a defense. It was meant to be an expression. As you step out of that courtroom, your movements grow simpler. You say yes when you mean yes. You say no without padding it. You leave when it's time to leave. There is no announcement. No justification. just alignment. Some people feel unsettled by this. They were comfortable with the version of you that explained, apologized, softened edges. Your quiet now forces them to confront their own need for control. They may call you distant. They may say you've changed. In a way, you have. You've stopped leaking. And in stopping, you begin to gather yourself. Moments stretch differently. A conversation ends without resolution, and you let it. A message goes unanswered, and you resist the urge to clarify. A decision is questioned, and you allow the question to remain. Each time, nothing collapses. The world keeps turning. The feared consequences fail to arrive. What arrives instead is trust. Not from everyone, but from yourself. You trust that your intentions don't need constant translation. You trust that time will reveal what you no longer rush to explain. You trust that being misunderstood for a while is not a threat to who you are. The Stoics believed that the highest form of confidence is quiet consistency. Not dramatic assertions. Not persuasive speeches. Just the repeated act of choosing what is right, then letting go of the audience. And so you walk forward carrying less. Less commentary. Less defense. Less noise. Your life becomes less about being interpreted and more about being lived. And in this continued absence of explanation, something subtle but irreversible keeps happening. Your presence grows heavier, your silence grows clearer, and the space you leave unfilled begins to say more than any explanation ever could, as it continues to deepen, to settle, to move onward. To move onward, carrying with it a quiet authority that no words could ever summon. You begin to see how people orient themselves around your stillness. Those who were once loud, eager to pull you into debates or demand justification, begin to speak differently. Some hesitate before they test you. Others withdraw entirely, no longer needing to challenge what they cannot control. And you realize that control was never yours to give, they were only ever testing if you would give it away. Your actions take on new weight. A decision, once explained in layers of reasoning, now stands on its own. Its integrity is evident in how it moves through the world. People notice, not always consciously, but the difference is unmistakable. They feel the quiet consistency, the refusal to explain, and they adjust, because they sense there is no leverage in chasing someone who does not offer themselves as negotiable. Even your own inner life transforms. Without the constant rehearsal of defenses, you listen more clearly to your instincts. You no longer debate yourself endlessly over how others perceive you. Instead, you observe, reflect, and act. The energy that once flowed outward into explanations now stays within, sharpening focus, strengthening resolve, and deepening awareness. And then you notice the most profound change: freedom. Real freedom. Not the freedom to speak your mind, or to justify, or to be understood. True freedom is the quiet, unshakable confidence that you do not owe the world your approval, your narrative, or your validation. It is the serenity of knowing that your life's trajectory does not depend on consensus, comprehension, or applause. The Stoics understood this: the universe does not bend to explanation, and the wise do not bend themselves to please it. When you stop explaining yourself, you align with this truth. You step out of the performance, out of the arena of constant justification, and you allow life to meet you on its terms. And in this meeting, something extraordinary happens. You move through moments with a gravity that is quiet but undeniable. People may speak over you, misjudge you, even resist you, but the unseen current beneath your restraint carries you forward. Every unspoken word, every withheld explanation, strengthens the foundation beneath your presence. You are no longer scattered. You are no longer at the mercy of perception. You are anchored, steady, and inexorably moving. And in that movement, silent, deliberate, unstoppable, the world begins to shift around you without you needing to lift a finger, prove a point, or defend a choice, as life itself starts to bend to the weight of a presence that no explanation can contain. And life itself starts to bend to the weight of a presence that no explanation can contain. You begin to notice how subtle the transformations are, yet how profound. Doors open without effort, conversations take shape without coercion, and opportunities arrive not because you've argued for them, but because you've made space for them to notice you. The universe doesn't rush you. It doesn't question your worth. It simply aligns with the steadiness you radiate. Those around you begin to behave differently. Some feel a quiet respect they never felt before. Others feel the absence of your defenses and are forced to confront their own expectations. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting the impatience, insecurity, or assumptions of others back to them. In this reflection, many stumble, some adapt, and the rest drift away. It is neither punishment nor reward, it is consequence, natural and impartial. You also begin to experience time differently. Without the constant need to explain, defend, or justify, your attention stretches. Moments expand. Decisions are made with clarity rather than urgency. You act with precision because your energy is no longer scattered across endless clarifications. What was once a torrent of effortful persuasion becomes a calm river of deliberate action. And beneath all of this, a deeper understanding emerges, that life does not need your constant commentary to function, and neither do people need your constant approval to exist. Your integrity, your boundaries, your values, they are self-evident when lived consistently. Explanation, when unnecessary, dilutes this force. Silence, when embraced, magnifies it. At first, it may feel strange, uncomfortable even, to allow your presence to speak for itself. Old habits of defending, justifying, or softening will rise like ghosts. But each time you resist the pull to explain, you reinforce the invisible structure of your autonomy. Each time you remain quiet, you demonstrate that your life is not negotiable, your essence not up for debate. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you notice a new rhythm emerging. Your words become selective, your actions deliberate, and your energy unbroken. You no longer exist to correct the misperceptions of others, you exist to inhabit the life you choose, and to move through it with unshakable calm. The world may continue to misunderstand you. It may attempt to challenge your silence, to provoke explanations, to unsettle the balance you've found. And yet, with each passing moment, you realize that misunderstanding is not a threat, it is a filter. Those who must engage with your truth will adjust. Those who cannot will fall away. And in this realization, a final clarity emerges. The more you release the need to explain, the more the world shifts, not around your words, but around your presence, your actions, and the quiet authority that comes from a life fully lived, unhurried, uncompelled, and completely your own. And completely your own. You start to notice how effortless life becomes when you no longer chase understanding. The space you once filled with explanations now becomes room for creation, reflection, and growth. Each moment is lighter because you are no longer carrying the weight of other people's interpretations. Your energy stays yours, whole and undivided, and in that wholeness, possibilities multiply. Decisions that once required justification now stand firm on their own merit. Boundaries are no longer fragile, they are clear and immovable. You act according to principle, not opinion, and in that alignment, your influence grows, not because you demand it, but because it is undeniable. People feel it. They may not name it, but they recognize the difference between someone who just talks and someone who embodies their truth. Even emotions change. Anxiety that came from anticipating judgment fades. Anger that once flared at misunderstanding softens. You no longer react to provocation with explanation, because you see how fleeting the need for validation truly is. Your mind becomes a quiet observatory, noticing without needing to interfere, choosing when to speak with purpose rather than compulsion. And then, almost imperceptibly, the shift spreads beyond yourself. Relationships evolve. Conversations deepen. Those who respect your silence rise to meet it, those who thrive on confusion or manipulation find less to latch onto and drift away. Your presence, steady and unrehearsed, becomes a quiet standard, proof that power is not loud, and clarity does not need constant advocacy. You realize that the act of stopping explanations is not withdrawal, it is mastery. It is the refusal to hand over pieces of your peace for the comfort of others. It is the choice to live from a place of certainty, not persuasion, and in that choice, everything begins to shift. And in that shift, the world begins to move differently around you, not because you forced it, not because you argued for it, but because you stopped trying to justify yourself to a world that was never equipped to understand the depth of your presence. The silence you hold is not emptiness, it is power, unfolding endlessly, quietly reshaping everything it touches. And quietly reshaping everything it touches. You begin to feel the subtle, almost imperceptible reverberations of your restraint. Moments that once demanded explanation now resolve themselves naturally. Conflicts that would have consumed your energy drift into resolution without a word from you. Your silence becomes a force that organizes, rather than reacts, a presence that guides without pushing, a weight that shapes without speaking. People start noticing the difference, even if they cannot name it. Some feel unsettled, accustomed to the old rhythm where your words smooth discomfort, justified choices, or repaired perceptions. Others are drawn closer, sensing a steadiness they themselves lack. Your influence grows quietly, not through persuasion or performance, but through the undeniable reality of a life lived in alignment with its own principles. You notice, too, the change within yourself. The mind that once raced to preempt criticism now rests. The heart that once sought validation now beats steadily on its own accord. The need to explain fades entirely, replaced by a deep sense of autonomy. Every action carries its own clarity, every decision its own authority. You are no longer entangled in the interpretations of others, no longer fragmented by the expectations of the world. And in that freedom, something extraordinary occurs. You discover patience, not the forced patience of endurance, but the natural patience of someone who no longer needs to control outcomes. Time ceases to be a pressure, and each moment expands into the space it deserves. You move deliberately, speak intentionally, act decisively, and rest fully. The Stoics would say you have begun to live in accordance with nature. Not the nature of events, which are beyond your control, but the nature of yourself, calm, self-contained, and unshakable. You do not act to persuade, defend, or appease. You act because it is right, because it aligns with your principles, and because your life is yours to inhabit, unfragmented by the expectations of others. And slowly, inevitably, the world bends to this presence, not through fear, not through argument, but through recognition. Recognition of someone who is complete in themselves, whose silence carries meaning, whose restraint commands respect, and whose life, unburdened by constant explanation, moves forward with a force that is quiet, relentless, and profoundly transformative. You begin to notice how even small interactions shift. A conversation that once left you exhausted now passes with ease. Requests that might have demanded your justification are met with calm discernment. You respond when it matters, and let go when it doesn't. The energy you once spent on explanations is now available for action, for creation, for presence. Every step feels lighter, yet more purposeful. People around you begin to recalibrate. Some lean closer, drawn to the quiet authority you exude. Others step back, realizing that the old patterns no longer apply. They are forced to encounter you as you are, without filters or defenses. And in that encounter, they either adapt, or they reveal themselves. In either case, clarity emerges, not through argument, but through the unspoken power of restraint. Your inner life, too, deepens. The mind that once clamored for approval now rests in observation. The heart that once sought validation now beats in quiet confidence. The need to explain has been replaced by understanding that life is not a court in which you must defend your worth, but a canvas on which your actions speak for themselves. With this shift comes freedom, a freedom unlike any other. Not the freedom to speak, to persuade, or to control outcomes, but the freedom to exist unfragmented, to act in accordance with your principles, and to move through the world without yielding your peace to the whims of others. Every choice, every boundary, every action becomes a reflection of this quiet sovereignty. And then, almost imperceptibly, the world responds. Opportunities align more naturally, relationships deepen in meaningful ways, and influence grows, not because you demand it, but because it cannot be ignored. Your presence becomes magnetic, not from volume or argument, but from the calm, unshakable integrity that now defines everything you do. You are no longer trapped in explanation. You are no longer at the mercy of misunderstanding. You are anchored, steady, and undeniably present. And in this anchoring, the Stoic truth becomes unmistakable, by stopping the need to justify yourself, by embracing silence as strength, and by letting your life unfold without constant commentary. You have tapped into a power far greater than words, the power to move through the world entirely on your own terms, shaping everything around you simply by being, quietly, fully, and unassailably. And unassailably yourself. You notice that life no longer feels like a constant negotiation. Each choice you make, each boundary you set, exists because it aligns with your principles, not because it seeks approval. The world no longer demands your explanations, and you no longer give them. There is a new rhythm to existence, deliberate, unhurried, and impossibly steady. Even challenges no longer unsettle you as they once did. Criticism, misunderstanding, and resistance arise, as they always will, but they no longer pull at your energy. You observe, assess, and act only when it matters. Otherwise, you remain grounded in the quiet certainty that your life does not depend on anyone's comprehension, and your value does not hinge on their understanding. This shift brings clarity in every dimension. Your work gains precision because it is not diluted by distraction. Your relationships gain depth because interactions are chosen, not compelled. Your mind grows quieter because it is no longer tasked with constant defense. And in that quiet, you hear your own guidance more clearly, recognizing what is essential and letting go of what is trivial. There is a subtle power in this, one that cannot be measured by accolades, influence, or approval. It is a power that moves silently, reshaping the spaces around you, demanding respect without demanding attention, and shaping the course of your life without announcing itself. Those who recognize it respond, those who do not, drift away, and both outcomes serve the same purpose, alignment. You come to understand, fully, that the world need not validate your choices for them to be correct. Your life unfolds in accordance with your principles, your actions speak louder than any explanation, and your presence carries weight precisely because it is grounded in self-possession, not persuasion. And in this steady, silent mastery, a new truth becomes undeniable. When you stop explaining yourself, when you release the endless cycle of justification, you do not weaken. You do not vanish. You transform. The gravity of your presence deepens, your life moves with an unshakable momentum, and everything, the world, others, and even the unseen currents of fate, begins to shift in response to the quiet power of a soul fully anchored, fully aligned, and fully at peace. And fully at peace. You begin to see how profoundly this changes the way the world touches you. You are no longer tossed by the judgments, misunderstandings, or demands of others. Their words and actions pass around you like wind around a mountain. You feel them, but they do not erode you. Your presence becomes a fixed point in a world of motion, and that steadiness has a gravity all its own. Conversations lose their tension. Conflicts that once demanded your explanation now resolve themselves naturally, or reveal their true nature without your interference. People who were drawn to drama or control drift away, while those who value clarity, integrity, and depth remain. Life simplifies itself around you, not because you forced it, but because you stopped participating in needless disturbance. Even your inner world flourishes. The mind that once raced to justify itself now rests in observation. You notice the impulses to defend, explain, or clarify, and instead of yielding, you simply watch them pass. The space that opens in that silence is filled with insight, creativity, and strength. You act from intention, not compulsion. You respond with purpose, not reaction. And the freedom this brings is unlike anything you have known. Freedom from constant validation, from endless negotiation, from the exhausting burden of explanation. Freedom from the need to prove yourself to those who never intended to understand. Freedom from the illusion that your worth depends on anyone's perception. The Stoics called this living in accordance with reason, with nature, with oneself. You do not fight the world. You do not bend yourself to its approval. You move in alignment with your own principles, and in doing so, you realize the deepest truth: your life does not require explanation. Your presence alone is enough. And in that realization, something extraordinary begins to happen. The quiet power you have cultivated spreads outward. Your actions carry more weight. Your decisions resonate farther. The world starts to respond, not to your words, but to the integrity that underlies them. You are no longer pulled into proving yourself. You simply exist, anchored, unwavering, and profoundly influential in ways that cannot be measured by applause or understanding.